All right, so we are live on the air. If you are listening to us on one of the 30 community radio stations, we greatly appreciate this. This is Fire Breathing Rob. We always bring the fire. If you are listening to us on one of the on our YouTube channel, I should say, please like and subscribe and definitely share this interview. We interview a lot of politicos, but a lot of people that have amazing stories around the country. We're going back into 2022. I know people are already gearing up to 2024, but we're going to kind of take a step back from two and bring it back to 2 weeks ago. And for the people listening into Rhode Island, in Rhode Island rather, I know they've heard me talk about this campaign, and I was very disappointed with the outcome, but we're going to kick around and see really what happened in the Ashley Kalus for Governor campaign with the campaign manager, Evan Gillissie. And did I get your name right?
You did. Thank you so
All
much
right.
for having me. Yes, and you nailed it. Most people throw a P in there or something, so that was great.
Okay. Well, Evan, first of all, thanks so much for coming on. I greatly appreciate you coming on. And I know you're taking a little hiatus from your political endeavors right now. So, like I said, it's great to have you on. So, I just said you were the campaign manager for the Ashley Kalus campaign. Can you tell people a little bit more about you besides, because I'm sure there's more to Evan than meets just his Ashley Kalus's campaign manager.
Sure, thank you. So, born and raised in Cranston, Rhode Island. I took an interest in politics in middle school, probably. I'm one of three kids, relatively conservative family, military dad, mom not really involved in politics, brother, sister, I'm the youngest, no interest in politics. I came along, me and my best friend at the time just fell in love with it. It was originally the Obama-McCain election in 2008 that got my feet wet. And then by the time I got into high school, I started a teenage Republicans group in my high school. I worked closely with Mayor Alan Fung of Cranston to get that off the ground. So that's where I really started to get involved, was through Mayor Fung. Volunteered with his campaigns, local, state reps, state senators, you name it. I was door knocking, lit dropping, whatever it took, making phone calls. Fast forward, graduated from Cranston High School East in 2012. And then I went down to Catholic University in DC, where I graduated from in 2016 with a bachelor's in poli-sci. And I was one credit away from a minor in philosophy. Probably should have finished that out, but that's okay. And then stayed in DC. Actually kind of hopped around for a little bit. I went back up to Rhode Island. I managed Mayor Fung's reelection campaign for mayor in 2016. When he lost for governor in 2014, he was still mayor. Manage that race. That race wasn't going to be very close. We thought maybe, given how 14 went, the race could be contentious, but he didn't have his opponent at the time just wasn't launching a campaign that was super serious. So before that campaign ended, the mayor knew that I wanted to return to DC. So he said, "Hey, we're going to win this. So if you want to go look at other opportunities now, you're welcome to." So I went down to actually North Carolina. I worked for Senator Burr's campaign in North Carolina. That night, this is 2016 election night, obviously Trump won in North Carolina. Shocking. Like when he won North Carolina, it was shocking. Obviously, what happened the hours following that was also shocking. Senator Burr won. The governor at the time, Pat McCrory, he went into recount, and I immediately went onto the recount team that night at like 1 a.m. A group of about 12 of us got into a room and we started planning a recount. Obviously, all that ended. He was not successful in the recount. I went back up to DC, where I started. I was a driver and scheduler for Mark Sanford of South Carolina. Okay. I was with him until I joined the Office of Management and Budget at the White House under Mick Mulvaney. Stayed with Mick Mulvaney for about 2.5 years. And then I went into the private sector. I was at a lobbying firm, and then I went into a different trade association and was doing some technology lobbying. And then I met Ashley at Easter of this past year. So a few friends of mine that were involved with her up in Rhode Island, were telling me, "You got to come back up. You got to do this. You got to do this." I had no desire. I was very happy with my life in DC. I was happy with where I was in my career, with my social group. The thought of moving back up to Rhode Island just wasn't even really in my calculus whatsoever. All that to say, I went up for Easter, met Ashley for lunch at Cello's on the Water, and we ended up having a 3-hour long lunch that was just, I was blown away. Like I saw something in her that I hadn't seen, and I've worked for too many politicians now, and this she just reeked of not being a politician. While I have like super Republican conservative credentials, I'm certainly not much of a party person, I would say. I've fallen out of love with Republican politics. Never was a big fan of the Democratic machine as a whole, especially in Rhode Island. So I saw myself looking more for people rather than party. And when I met Ashley, I was like head over heels, and then I moved back up. So that's how I got to where I was. Sorry, I was kind of a long
No,
backstory.
no, that was very good. You answered about 3 or 4 questions, and I didn't know that you had that much experience in politics. So, and I mean, we could go on for hours even if we were to backtrack, but I don't want to backtrack too much. I do want to get into what Ashley is like behind the scenes. She's gotten a bad rap because, and as you know, being the campaign manager, you went through this for the past 8-ish weeks, even more than that. But that's when I guess you hit the ground running. The not from around here, the Ron DeSantis, which, is a person that votes in Florida, that lives in Florida. Yes, he's very popular in Florida. We saw a 19.5 point win for the governor, but that's not really going to play well up here. Or maybe a Ronald Reagan answer, maybe a Charlie Baker answer might have been better for these people up here. But I don't know if the DeSantis, but she got a bad rap with that, not from around here, the DeSantis, the text message stuff. What is she like behind the scenes? Tell the viewers that, because they just hear these things in the news and they get this thought that she's like the B word, we'll just say, and not bring it out there.
Sure, no. Behind the scenes, Ashley, let's just say the two of us are going to be friends for life. And I think that's very rare when you work that intimately close with somebody, where you're getting news stories or, comments on social media or phone calls from people that say you're doing everything wrong. When you go through campaigns are traumatic experiences, more so than people probably realize that they are. Just the level of effort and your whole life is given to it. So Ashley was, she was the hardest worker on the campaign, hands down. She could go all day long, 7 days a week. If you followed us on social media, you saw she was literally everywhere. And while there's a lot of good staff work that went into getting that done, she was driving that ship. She knew that to combat the I'm not from here, you have to show up. So she decided to show up to anything that someone invited her to. In the beginning, it's interesting. A lot of the events, we were just looking around on the internet to find what's happening in Rhode Island this weekend. 3 months in, probably by early, it was really 4th of July weekend where I noticed the massive shift when we did the Bristol 4th of July parade. And she had reached that people know who she is. She's getting recognized. People are flocking to her, asking to take pictures with her. We kind of hit a different stride in the campaign where the events were just coming to us so easily.
But wouldn't the comeback, and just to interrupt Evan, it wouldn't the comeback from the not from around here with that silly commercial that Governor McKee was playing, which if you look for that commercial online, I know people aren't probably looking for that. You can't find that commercial anymore on YouTube, on Governor McKee's YouTube channel, on YouTube in general. Very strange how that just disappeared now.
I mean, let's just say I think it was an inappropriate message. I think it sends the wrong message to Rhode Islanders about not being from here. Roger Williams was not from Rhode Island, and look where we are
Not even just that. They wouldn't use that against Sabina Matos. I mean, she's not from around here. I mean, I'm not trying to get down that road, but what's true is true. She came from the Dominican Republic to here. And then second of all, the comeback rather, I thought should have been said was, yeah, that's good that she's not from around here, because the people that from around here haven't been working good for the state of Rhode Island. They've been losing a lot of money. The state public school system is in disarray. The state is in shambles. So yeah, I would rot somebody that's maybe not from around here then.
Exactly. And that is definitely, the message that we would share when people will talk to us about it. We put that up on social. She would mention that whenever she was on during an interview. I think the ad itself, our ads, obviously we went negative very hard. Spent a lot of money going negative after the governor. Ours were, I would say, rooted in fact, not so much the emotional side of politics. the Democrats have a strong history of running on emotion rather than running on fact, I would say, especially in Rhode Island. The Social Security, the abortion, Ashley, at the end of the day, was not running on any sort of social issue platform, whether it's abortion or gay rights or whatever it may be. She was inclusive and welcoming of all those ideas, but what she really cared about was nothing more than kids that were trapped in failing schools. That was her number one concern. That's why she started to run for governor. She saw how ineffective, how corrupt, how backwards the state government was. The thing that bothered me the absolute most was this constant, there was the trolls, the theme out there was that she chose Rhode Island, right? She moved to Rhode Island, calculated decision so she could run for governor, and she's this Trump plant. We heard that. McKee said those words. So it certainly wasn't us that was putting that out there. There was this idea that there's some conspiracy theory that she was put into Rhode Island to run as a Republican and spend her millions of dollars to further the MAGA agenda, perhaps. I'm not sure. I just know that's so far from the truth. And that was the most frustrating part for me, was hearing that when in reality she moved to Rhode Island because she won a state contract based on merit. That's half the cost of her competitors. That contract, that's a whole saga in and of itself, that contract that the governor, I'm sure, would love to never talk about. And she, having been an outsider with a window into the state government, which is very rare for Rhode Island, when you come in as an outsider, you in a crisis, and then she could just see how backwards the governor's office to DOH to DOA was handling some of the COVID stuff, and her antennas went up, and she said, "This isn't right. People deserve better. And hell, I'll run for office and see if I can make a difference." And she wasn't even going to run for governor. Blake Filippi was supposed to be running for governor if right. People who are following. So again, it wasn't this preconceived kind of plan. It just stars kind of aligned. They would have aligned a little bit better if she won, but it is what it is. And she gave it her best shot. And I'm super proud of her and the campaign that she ran. I'm also happy to talk about the Ron DeSantis piece quickly,
sure,
which is kind of ties into the whole the disliking of social issues, which is when she's doing an interview or talking with people, she wants to talk policy, and she got branded as not having any policy, when in reality, went to London School of Economics, Columbia. She is an economist, super smart businesswoman. She's brilliant. Ashley is a brilliant person. People didn't really see that, but she is, and that's not me just blowing smoke. I haven't said that about many politicians in the past, but point being is, when she's in those types of interviews, her mind just doesn't, when she's asked about like a personal question or something that she wasn't expecting, she kind of just blanks a little bit, and that's okay. It just happened to be she blanked super early. I think if she could go back in time, she would have probably not said the name Ron DeSantis. I think she would have chosen, George Washington, Abe Lincoln, Ronald Reagan, Charlie Baker, Chris Sununu, you name it. Like, there's so many others that she could have named that would have helped avoid some of that bad branding. That being said, it was just an honest kind of gut reaction response. And that's kind of how politics goes. People jump on it, and next thing you know, she's attached to everything that Ron DeSantis does or says.
Well, we should all be honest too with the audience. And again, for people that are just listening, Evan Gillissie here on Fire Breathing Rob, Ashley Kalus's campaign manager for governor of the state of Rhode Island. Evan, the media was against her. Let's be honest. Besides WPRI 12, which I felt like gave her a fair shake, maybe you disagree, but they were the only ones that were going after the governor, and on things that they should have went after him on. But 10, 6, I don't think they really did much reporting on Ashley or anybody in general, but I'm not trying to go after them. But there was a lot of media bias against Ashley as far as that goes. I do want to tie that in as far as that. Do you agree with that too?
Yeah, I think WPRI Channel 12 I think they're incredibly fair. I don't think I would say they went after the governor. I think they held the governor perhaps just more accountable than other news networks, news stations did. Channel 6, they came to everything that we put out. So I give them a lot of credit. They came to everything. Channel 10, we did many press conferences. Channel 10 rarely made the effort to show up. So that was kind of disheartening, a little frustrating, especially towards the end of the campaign. So as far as the bias piece goes, the thing that I think is a bigger problem was the fact that you have basically the Democratic primary was so contentious in the beginning. So you had all the attention put on to those 4 candidates, 5 candidates, however many there were. So they were getting all in the news cycle. And we knew that that was going to be the case. It wasn't necessarily a bad thing. I think in hindsight, it's a bit of a disservice for the media to just not pay any attention to the other side because there wasn't a contentious primary. So I think a lot of the phishing stories that came out on Ashley towards the end there, which are legitimate stories to run, they all could have run in August, July, June.
Well, the Providence Journal really hit you guys hard at the end. I mean, there was really some serious bias against Ashley Kalus with the Providence show. I mean, it was kind of despicable too.
Yeah, the Boston Globe, Providence Journal, the Boston Globe is fair to us. Providence Journal, I would argue, Kathy Gregg is an icon in Rhode Island. So she has been around for 40 something years. I've actually built a very healthy, good relationship with her. Do we have fundamental disagreements on the role of the media? Yes. And I'm not going to move that mountain in a 6-month political campaign. That is for the owners of these media companies to take those battles up. And right now, if they get clicks, they get profits, they're happy. And God knows the Projo could use more clicks. So,
I mean, the paper's like looks like the Johnston Gazette or something like that. The Johnston Sunrise. I mean, actually, I think the Johnston Sunrise is fatter than.
I was going to say the Valley Breeze is great. The Valley Breeze is phenomenal in Rhode Island. And Kathy's great. Projo just unfortunately is, I think it's a little bit more of a liberal progressive paper that its audience is made up of 30,000 people, I believe is the number of subscribers that the Projo has, and it's your educated upper class academic crowd, and they want to read what they want to read. So it's frustrating. It is what it is. Channel 12, again, I think was incredibly fair to us. But my biggest frustration is that they didn't do more work to get to know Ashley in the several months leading up to the primary. Instead, the excuse was, oh, we needed to do it now. We're doing our job. It's like, well, I mean, it's a bit of an eye roll for me.
Evan, we got quite a few audience questions, and I want to roll into this one since we're talking about the media. We both didn't bring this person up, and he kind of flew under the radar. I think you know where I'm going with this. And his name is Dan York. He has a show on 6:30 WPRO from 3 to 6. It's an infomercial for the McKee administration, and at the time, the McKee campaign. Why didn't you guys go hard after Dan York? I know John DePietro, who went to a lot of your press conferences. I listen to him every day. Big Ashley guy, and was hoping for a lot of these wins that didn't come about in November. He brought this up all the time, that he didn't understand why the campaign didn't really go after a Dan York, in that, he was just bashing Ashley 3 hours a day. Go ahead.
When you say go after, what do you mean?
Just like, I think John asked Ashley a question one time. It was a press conference in Providence. I don't remember.
Outside of Ride. Yep, it was.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. You're pushing my memory good. So, but with that said, it seems like there wasn't a lot of talk, maybe I should say, about him and the campaign. It was almost like he was McKee's communications guy, basically, and it was free airtime from 3 to 6 every day, from Monday through Friday, and he would just blast her, called her evil. I mean, in the debate that was talked about, that on the stage, that there was a McKee surrogate that was calling Ashley evil, and that was him. So I just didn't think there was too much. Go ahead.
Part number one is, we talked about Ron DeSantis earlier. So we had a bit of an issue that we were aware of the branding of being Trumpish. Doesn't work in Rhode Island, period. So got to shed that. Who is the most known person to attack the media again and again and again? Donald Trump. So we start attacking Dan York. It's going to be out of Trump's playbook. Ashley Kalus, the story writes, it's the mental gymnastics you go through are not that difficult to understand.
But couldn't you guys go after and say that's a sexist attack? And also, the McKee campaign is sexist because they went after Helena Folks. when she rather tried to call him and he said hang up on her, and then he's going after throughout the campaign, with the Siegel thing, and then if he went after you guys with the Dan York thing, that this
So
is
we put out
sexist.
about a 4-minute video that basically outlined how Dan McKee is misogynist. So we
Okay.
put out we were hit upon that, but I would also just for awareness on the Dan York thing. Obviously, I'm not a big Dan York fan. I like intellectual people, and he lacks that greatly. However, I wouldn't say that if there was a legal pathway that could have been taken, we would have taken it. But he was not breaking the law. WPRO was not violating fairness doctrine. They were within their rights of their news station, so our hands are relatively tied.
But they did give you a tough time. Even Tara Granhan kind of gave her a tough time toward the end, where I thought she was kind of fair at the beginning with Ashley, since Ashley would go on there consistently. And then toward the end with the text messages, you know, they were being very unfair about that.
Yeah,
But
Tara was. I'm a big Tara fan. I think we had a rocky start with Tara, which was more so Ashley's just not being great at interviews in the beginning, I would say. First time candidate, that's just kind of natural.
right.
And she just does better in studio. She likes going in studio. So her first couple with Tara were over the phone. I think it was a little bit of an awkward environment. I would say Tara was unbelievably fair to Ashley. Even when the text messages came out, she wasn't super harsh on her, not like Dan York. Just the hypocrisy, though, for Dan York to be the one to now say that Ashley's temperament is, disqualifying to be governor when Dan McKee is a known misogynist who is literally under FBI investigation. But we're just going to pretend that that's completely okay. She said some bad words in texts. Give me a break.
Well, I want somebody that's going to be tough. We went back to, and then I do want to move on. But going back, she was a fighter. The first commercial, the boxing commercial, the commercial with her son with the boxing, she's a fighter. Rhode Island needs a fighter, as you said, she said throughout the damn campaign. And we have somebody that just wants to give money away. And once I know that he just reenacted the COVID. I'm blanking right now, and I apologize to the audience. And yeah, but he just reenacted that. And I know the President Biden also pushed that a state of emergency too. That's what I was thinking of. And it's just to get that free money going into the state, that federal dollars, and eventually that's going to come to an end with the Republican House, hopefully. But I do want to move on to some questions before we get, because there are some people listening on the air, and I do appreciate if you do want to call in, you're more than welcome to call in to speak with Evan on these matters. But we're going to get some of these audience questions in before we move back to the YouTube as far as that goes. So, I told you I listened to John DePietro quite often. And he, obviously was a big Ashley Kalus person and trying to push her too. There was a lot of talk from him in that station that Ashley was down toward the end by 3 points. Is that correct? Is that internal polls? Is that incorrect? Because it seemed like if you watched on election night and you saw the concession speech that Ashley gave, it looked like she was very disappointed. Obviously, she lost the race, but it looked like she was thinking she was going to win that race 100%.
Yeah, we thought we were going to win that race. On election night, we felt good. We felt good all election day. The story that you shared about your mom and family, Union Democrats that voted for Ashley, we heard that every single day. Everywhere we went, we heard the same thing. Our polling indicated a very close race. We know for a fact the governor's polling indicated a very close race. You could see that just because in the opening few weeks post-primary, he would say, my opponent, my opponent. By the end, it was just mudslinging anything he could using her name, Ashley Kalus, which in and of itself is a sign that you're closing the gap. We knew it was going to be a very close race. I would have guessed it was closer. I think, all polling was off. All the national data was pretty off on how they were tracking was the biggest problem being the enthusiasm gap. So Republicans thought enthusiasm was on their side, and it clearly was not. Independents were breaking 9 out of 10 to the Democrat on election day. That was not just a Rhode Island issue. That was all of New England. That was, if Alan Fung was up 8 points and loses by, what did he lose by 5 points, 6 points, something like that, there's a problem. So that's a 14-point swing. We had a 16-point swing from -3 to -19 or wherever it ended. Honestly,
so then that was correct. Then that what they were saying about the 3 points was correct. Then
that's correct. Yes.
Oh wow. Okay. I didn't know if that was correct, and that was just hearsay by people saying blowing smoke around. But okay.
No, I mean, he was afraid. I mean, we were getting calls from people very close to him saying people that didn't want to talk to you for months are like, oh God, I might need a job in a couple of weeks. So let's buddy up to the Ashley Kalus campaign all of a sudden. It's a real thing, especially in a state like Rhode Island where it's so small. Everyone knows each other. It was wild to watch it. And we definitely felt good on election day, especially South Kingston was my biggest concern on election day, watching it, the number throughout early voting. And then on the day itself, the number was just too high. South Kingston's been very, very progressive lately. It's again, that upper middle class, upper whiter, educated voter that Trump pushed out of the party or basically pushed far away. And the hope was maybe they would come back. And they didn't, obviously. Places like Johnston, North Providence, Cranston, Warwick, where the turnout was exactly what we wanted if it was being composed of the votes that we wanted them to be composed of, and it just wasn't. We were off. It's okay. It is what it is.
Yeah, I want to get into this though. The DGA did put $260,000 in at the last minute, and that's where I think people were saying, that data was correct, that the 3 points and that it was in that margin of error. But then, we saw what happened on election day. So when you saw that 260,000 the last 3 or 4 days before the campaign ends, you're thinking that you might have this in hand for sure, 100% then.
Correct.
Okay.
Not 100%.
All right.
But
well, right. But it was either they had money to blow or something was going on there.
yeah, they were afraid. They would not have come in if they weren't,
Right.
concerned over the outcome. And the fact, the whole time we're like holding our breath, don't come in, don't come in, don't come in, because we don't want, we had a financial advantage. We didn't want the national party to lose that. And then if they came in, then say the RGA comes in and then it's a wash and it's like just more commercials. People are more annoyed with everything. So we were liking the under the radar kind of approach. I was happy with that. At the end of the day, them coming in, they came in because they thought that he could lose. There's no other reason for them to come in. Someone could argue perhaps, they came in to shore up their wins. I highly doubt it. They had money to spend in other states. So yeah, they saw what we saw. Everyone saw what was wrong, which is, like I said, it happens, I guess.
Again, for people listening, Evan Gillissie here on Fire Breathing Rob. Ashley Kalus is campaign manager for Ashley Kalus for governor in the state of Rhode Island. This was a race, obviously, that was in November of this year. And I know a lot of people listening, rather, was, wanted to hear more about this race. So I am getting the call from the producer saying that they're going to take a commercial break, Evan. If you're gracious to come back, we're going to do more audience questions from people around the state and people that were following this race.
Absolutely.
All right.